we sat down and we tried to brainstorm it. What does it mean concretely for the Caribbean to be a zone of peace? You know, can we be a zone of peace if we still have European colonies in the Caribbean? Can we be a zone of peace from an environmental point of view if big countries don't take climate change seriously, and every year increasingly destructive hurricanes are going to be barreling through the Caribbean and destroying small, fragile Caribbean islands? So it really challenges us to think, what does it mean? How can we be a zone of peace if we're going to have a proliferation of small arms and firearms coming from North America flooding our countries? If we're going to have a cultural penetration that is fostering the most inhumane and alienating values, and our young people are gravitating more and more towards that kind of value system, that in which, you know, they are capable of committing horrific acts against each other or against their society. So we grappled with all of that, and I want to recommend the document that we produced, the Bridgetown Declaration, but I won't go further into that. I want to go more directly now to reparations. Reparations. I personally believe that reparations, correctly understood and creatively pursued, holds the key to many of the problems and predicaments confronting us as African people all over the world. I think reparations has the capacity to unify us, to give us a common cause. I think it has the capacity to help us not only in a material way, but in a cultural and psychological and psychic way as well. But before I speak more fully about my own concept of reparations, I would like to report that the governments and nations of the Caribbean have, over the past 4 years, taken a giant leap forward in identifying themselves with the reparations cause. I would say that this 21st century period of the reparations movement is really rooted in that 2001 United Nations World Conference against racism. There will be some people in this room who would have been involved, deeply involved in that process. And it brings me back to Canada again, because that process started for us at our regional preparatory meeting in Santiago de Chile, in Chile. You know, when you have a world conference, I mean the very term, a world conference, it's a big conference. And there are a whole set of preparatory meetings that are held, and a whole set of preparatory work that is done before you actually get to the conference. So each region of the world, you begin with a hemispheric preparatory meeting. So we started in this Western Hemisphere at our regional meeting in Chile. Now, you know, when the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean and North America come together in regional convocations, there are two big boys in the room who tend to have their way: the United States and Canada. So when we attended that preparatory meeting, I was I was the director of the Barbados government's Commission for Pan-African Affairs, so I was on the Barbados governmental delegation. And we went to this preparatory meeting all geared up. This is an opportunity to deal with racism, with slavery, with the transatlantic slave trade and the system of racialized slavery being crimes against humanity, with the need for reparations. So we go to the conference with this agenda. The United States of America and Canada then says to all of us, no, this World Conference will have nothing to do with slavery. It will have nothing to do with slavery being any crime against humanity. It will have nothing to do with reparations. So that's not what this World Conference is all about. This World Conference is about things like what are happening in Central Europe. The racial conflicts in Central Europe and the Roma and Gypsy people and so forth. Nothing to do about the historical roots of racism. In fact, it will have nothing to do with the past period. That's the United States and Canada. And we said to them, you all have to be joking. How are you going to deal with racism, modern racism, when you don't deal with the very root of modern racism, the transatlantic slave trade, and the associated system of racialized chattel slavery, all the crimes against humanity, the genocides, and the need for reparations, because the consequences persist up to today. So the battle lines were drawn. And as I said, United States of America and Canada are accustomed getting their way. But because of the righteousness of our cause, because of the passion with which we pursued that cause, and when I say we, I mean principally the delegations of Barbados, Jamaica, and Cuba. We convinced every governmental delegation in that conference, with the exception of Canada and the United States, to side with us. So it was the whole of the Americas on one side, Canada and the United States isolated. And so that's how we passed the resolution talking about slavery being a crime against humanity and about reparations being on the agenda of the United Nations conference. But the point I'm making is Canada was standing in the doorway. They had joined with the United States, and as the conference went along, as the whole World Conference process went along, it transpired that the countries that were opposing reparations were Canada, United States, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, the white countries of Western Europe. We were able to bring together Latin America, the Caribbean, African continent, and important allies in Asia like Pakistan, Iran, and so forth. And so, that's how, anyhow. Eventually, we were able to get a Durban Declaration and Program of Action. I think I have the book somewhere in my bag, in which the legitimacy of reparations were recognized. And so I'm saying that was the root, 2001, for all that has happened in reparations since then. So in 2013, just a fast track. Okay, here's the Durban Declaration and Program of Action that came out of that UN conference in 2001. And this is a document that all of us should really possess. We should all possess a copy of this document. And this is a document that we need to use in our advocacy. You need to use in your advocacy when you approach or confront the Canadian authorities about your own unfinished black agenda. But in 2013, the governments of the Caribbean community decided that they were going to commit themselves to a campaign for reparations, for native genocide, and the enslavement of African people in our Caribbean region. And so they established something called the CARICOM Reparations Commission, and they mandated every member state of CARICOM to establish a national governmental committee or task force on reparations. So I'm a member of the Barbados Task Force. And the CARICOM Reparations Commission has developed what they call a 10-point action plan for reparations. And I'll just read the 10 agenda items that they have put forward. 1, a formal apology. 2, a repatriation program. 3, an indigenous people development program. 4, the development of cultural institutions such as museums and historical research centers. 5, programs to deal with the public health crisis afflicting so many Caribbean countries. 6, an illiteracy eradication program. 7, African knowledge program, where they're talking about student exchanges between the Caribbean and Africa and study tours. 8, psychological rehabilitation, and is a little difficult to understand exactly what the